Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping.
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
And you're watching Combat Sports UK.
Hello everyone, it's Brandon here for Combat Sports UK. I am delighted today to be joined by a man who's making a lot of noise in Scotland at the minute, especially after Saturday night in the Hydro. He's the head coach of Higher Level MMA, who went 4-0 at PFL Europe in Glasgow on Saturday. How's things, James?
Not bad, mate, not bad. Same as always.
I wanted to kind of start off by, obviously, you had Mark Ewan getting a Darce choke on Saturday, first round, Lorenzo Parente getting an armbar first round, Gemma Old getting a lovely decision win, and then Stevie Ray, of course, bringing back the Scottish Twister. What kind of magic are you teaching in the higher level BJJ classes? You must be inundated with members after Saturday night. That is unreal.
Mate, I think we're traditionally, I think we're actually known more as a striking gym, which we aren't. We're careful to put an emphasis on like the full kind of repertoire of MMA skills and stuff like that. It's just kind of how those matches played out. The four athletes that we had out of the weekend are well rounded. They can all strike, wrestling, and grappling. I think they've just took their chances when they've came, which is what you should be doing at professional level.
I think you're spot on. They were lovely submissions, and to get them in the first round as well. Obviously, having such a vast amount of talent on a card in Scotland on a show as big as the PFL, it was a big achievement for Scottish MMA in itself. You're the coach of the guys that went out there and done this job. Could you have ever envisioned it as playing out as perfect as it did?
I actually, you remember when the UFC came to Dublin, I think the first time, John SBG had, I think they had like 4 or 5 on and they all win. I had a Facebook status the day after saying pretty much I'm going to do that with Glasgow. And I've had guys on the UFC when they've came to Glasgow a couple of times and stuff like that, but I never had as many as 4 on the one card, so that was the first time. But it has kind of been like the fruition of that plan we set in motion. I think that was like maybe 2012 or 13 or so, and the UFC was in Dublin the first time that night when Paddy and obviously Conor and Ash Daly and Cahill were all winning. So it was something we've been planning for that for a while. The PFL's obviously gave us an opportunity there to put more than 1 or 2. We've had 2 on the Hydro before the UFC and stuff like that, but PFL's obviously gave us that opportunity. And to be honest, they told us about the Hydro about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and we knew we would have guys on at the sign, guys specifically from the gym coming out of like really good amateur careers. So it feels like we've been preparing for that night for the best part of 4 months. It's just constantly been in the back of our head. And that show at the weekend at the Hydro was, we'd fighters out every week for 5 weeks, and that was the last one. It's obviously the biggest one at the run of 5 weeks, but it was just a bit of relief getting those 5 weeks of shows over and done with. Then moving guys like Lorenzo onto for the regional shows onto a bigger platform, and obviously having Stevie back and headlining it. He's been high up on UFC cards and stuff before, and he's obviously headlined at PFL at New York. But it was a massive night for Scottish MMA. It was obviously a very big night for us as a team in a gym. And thankfully our 4 guys have turned up and they've performed on the night.
They definitely did perform on the night. Do you think as a gym or as a coach that night can be taught?
I hope so. I tried to see it for what it was. So obviously it's hard not to get involved with it emotionally and stuff like that. I mean, I used to stay about half a mile for the Hydro, do you know what I mean? It's somewhere I pass used to pass that every day and look at it, and we've had fighters in there 3 or 4 times before, but it'll be a hard one to top. But if we can't top it, there's no point in us continuing to go on. I'm hoping they've already said they'll be back in the Hydro PFL, so now the task for us is trying to repeat it. Do you know what I mean? It's get 4 or 5 guys on again and keep the performances high and try and match it or better it, and then eventually, hopefully, there's going to be more and more shows there through the years, and we've got guys on the main card or co-main and main event, and hopefully even challenging for titles there.
Do you think, you mentioned there that you have known about it for 5 months, so it's obviously been like a very, very long camp, or the camp was maybe shorter, but it's been in the back of your mind for so long. Do you think that played a part in the success of it, the fact that you did have time to run over different situations and manifest it out fully?
I think so. We were the only thing that we never knew. We obviously had the date, and we knew through Dan Hardy who would be on the card roughly. The only thing that we never had, and it mixed up a bit near the end, was the opponents. The opponents, some of them were quite late. Like Gemma's was a week notice, Mark's was 3, I think. Lorenzo's changed a couple of times, but we had the date in mind, and we were preparing for that date. And then we won because we were getting opponents or different opponents or suggested opponents. We pretty much just focused on ourselves like we always do. We just made sure our guys were fit, they were well rounded, and then when the last opponents officially got kind of signed off, and we're like, there's surely there's not going to be another change here. We had a quick look at game plans and stuff like that, but the attention to detail in the camp over the 5 months was probably at a level we've not had before, because we were pretty adamant that we had this big show coming to the Hydro. It was the first one in a long time, and we were going to make sure we used it as a showcase for our gym. Selfishly, whatever happened with Scottish MMA can take care of itself, but it was always going to be a showcase for us. We did have the Cage Warriors card a couple of weeks before in Glasgow, and with Keir Harvey and Sean Clancy winning bigger than that as well, so everything kind of lined up pretty well for us.
It is definitely lining up perfectly for you, and as like you say, for the 4 guys from the gym, they go out and go 4-0. It's something that I'm sure you could only have dreamt of. You've obviously achieved a lot as a coach, but you also achieved a lot as an MMA fighter. What was the highlight of your career as a fighter?
I think probably just traveling and stuff like that. I had some big fights. I fought in Japan. I fought in the Free Arena in Dublin and stuff like that. So I fought in big places, but I got to fight in Celtic Park. I think it's still been the only MMA event in Celtic Park in one of the function suites there, at a dinner show. And the time I was fighting a guy called Mikael Hammersmith, who was the best featherweight in Europe for a while. He was at American top team, and they dropped to bantamweight, and we fought to a draw. But it was like a hard, grueling, horrible, nasty, bloody fight. So I'm kind of proud of that fight in terms of just that I had to go through like some shit in the fight. It wasn't a pleasant fight to be in. I had concussion and stuff after it, and it was grueling. But the fact that it was at Celtic Park, being a Celtic supporter, was a pretty big night. It was a wee bit different. Like we've warmed up in one of the media rooms overlooking the park and stuff like that. It was kind of cool, mate. So things like that. But at the same time, I only ever took those fights with a view to it helping me become a better coach, just so I could understand stuff. I was fully aware that I wasn't intelligent enough to be one of these coaches who can never have a fight and then coach fighters. So I was like, I need to immerse myself in this. Try and have my initial plan was to have 1 or 2 fights, just so I can be aware of the nerves and everything. And then nobody could come and say to me, "You're asking me to do stuff you've never done." And it just kind of dragged on a wee bit for 2002 right through to 2013, and like 30 pro fights. But it was just like it was gather knowledge so that I could coach better. So
then, from like your pro debut, would you say your goal was still to become a coach? It wasn't they make it as a fighter?
Yeah, I knew. Even for about 17 years old, I knew I'd be better at coaching as I was at fighting. I wasn't athletic as a lot of guys, physically gifted as some. I was kind of hard working, pretty fast, and relatively smart with my approach to things. But it was always my very first kickboxing fight at 17 was so I could coach kickboxing, and then obviously it's spiraled for there into MMA. And I was like, I need to learn grappling. I need to test this. I need to get in there, and I know I'll learn more. I think I read a quote in a book when I was a kid. I think it may have been Dannon and Santo just saying, look, 1 fight's worth a year of training. So I was like, right, I'll have some of that. And that kind of helped me. But it was just so that I can discuss things with fighters that if I hadn't fought and hadn't been in these situations, whether it's local shows in front of 200 people or 7 or 8,000 at the free arena, which I'd done, it was I could relate to it and help them out.
Why do you think your mind kind of worked that way? Because I suppose for most people, the beauty about MMA or fighting is you're the main guy who takes center stage on the night. You go in and you try and get the hand raised, but you're obviously looking at it in a different way where you get that fulfillment through helping others. And I suppose most coaches, it comes from they fight and then they go in the coaching, and it may be because they found out they've enjoyed it, or they may be doing it just to stick around the sport. But you're obviously quite unusual in the sense that you knew you wanted to do that from early.
I think it was when I was a wee guy, like 8 years old, seeing like my first karate instructor, and I was just like, I want to be like him. Like, just I was one of the kids that get bullied, so I found martial arts as a way to deal with that and to learn self-confidence and stuff. And I remember like the first karate instructor and seeing him, and I was like, he seems confident. Do you know what I mean? He's like,
yeah.
He seems to have his shit together. I want to be like him. And then even by getting to the time of 13, 14, meeting another coach and seeing the effect he had on me as a kid, like just helping me kind of come out my shell. Like I was kind of painfully shy as a kid. Wouldn't leave the house and stuff like that. And a coach I had quite young called Gordon Russell kind of helped me with that. And I think that was it more than anything else. And it was the centre stage thing never bothered me. Even when I was fighting, I'd get into the fight and then get out. I wasn't one of the guys looking for cameras and adulation and stuff like that. I just wanted to get it done and then kind of dissect it and move on. And my coaching style is pretty much the same. I'm quite hands-on with coaching, but I've no interest in being like famous or stealing the limelight off the guys that are getting it in there and doing it. I'm not like putting up videos of myself with motivational fucking speeches. I'm not doing ask me anything on Facebook. And do you know what I mean? I'm still in the mind that I can help people through what we're doing, but I'm not going to force it down people's throat. Like, and I think that with the group of athletes I'm working with, especially the guys at the weekend, we bond well because I'm like that and they're the way they are. We just kind of make stuff work.
That is definitely commendable, and especially in today's world where social media is massive. You know, there's loads and loads of coaches out there who are doing that kind of thing, which is okay too. In terms of fighting, just as we're talking about fighting in comparison to coaching, which one would fulfill you more? Getting hand raised, let's say if it's at Celtic Park, or a night like Saturday night where you're in the Hydro and you're living the joy through your fighters. Which one would be more fulfilling for you?
Probably the Saturday night. It was a massive night for us. I can try and downplay it as much as possible, but like everyone came together perfect for the team, the 4 years, the guys we had backstage, the camp. And again, we've had nights like that before. When the UFC came to Scotland the first time and Stevie beat Leandro Mafra in there, it was just like it was something different. Do you know what I mean? The winning those fights, for what I remember for winning the fights, was that you were elated for one night, and then the next day it was. I always say to Stevie, like as we're about to walk out, I was like, try and enjoy this. You're going to be sitting on the couch, back in Kirkcaldy, sitting on the couch tomorrow night. Do you know what I mean? And he always sent me a picture of him sitting on the couch with a takeaway. That's how fighting was. But what we done at the weekend, like people are going to talk about that for a while. Probably like, to the fact with the form, the submission, the victories, and the manner of the victories and stuff like that. So it's probably going to be for the coaching perspective.
Yeah, and I think not only in terms of the fighters will be talking about it, I think everyone that experienced it in the Hydro on Saturday night. I wasn't lucky enough to be there, but I've heard reports that the atmosphere was unbelievable. And you know, if your gym hadn't went 4-0, that there turns into a completely different night for the supporters. So you've done a really, really good thing there for the Scottish MMA fans. In terms of coaching, do you kind of have like a philosophy that would set your coaching style aside from others, and would that kind of lead on to the success that you're seeing?
I think the main thing is a kind of fundamental level. It's just dealing with everybody differently. Like there's no, you can see it when you watch your athletes. None of them are the same. Like it's not like some gyms you go in. it's maybe known as a jiu-jitsu gym, or they're known as a striking gym, or some of them even like stand the same way, and they're all kind of wee carbon copies of each other. Whereas ours is definitely trying to develop a system or a style of fighting that suits their personality and their physical attributes, and just try and develop something and make something grow through that. So it's very, very individual specific style we've got to coaching. There are obviously some generalisation. You still have to strike, you still have to grapple, you still have to wrestle and do your strength and conditioning and stuff like that. But it's a lot of what we do is when fighters come in, I'll try and spend a bit of time with them and just get to know them, and then it's about how to develop them from getting to know them. There's some guys in the gym that I maybe no need to. They can do a 6-week camp and I'll need to speak to them twice. I'll speak to them at the start and then near the end. And there's other guys I know I need to speak to them on a daily basis, to the point where maybe I even going home at night and sending them stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's just getting to know the athlete, I think, and then being smart enough to work them out and work out some kind of plan that's going to work best for them. And again, not be lazy and just treat everybody the same and stuff like that. Again, it's trying to differentiate between coaching for participation, which is taking a group of 30 people and running a class, and then coaching for performance. So a lot of my coaching is came from watching professional coaches in sports, where the financial implications of sports much higher. So the coaches are generally a lot more professional, like American football or basketball or football, and then even boxing. Early on, I started studying kind of boxing coaches and took a lot of what they were doing as opposed to martial arts coaches, which were generally still teaching in class environments. So I think some of it's that, and then it's just this constant trying to study all the time, like just constantly researching and reading and trying new stuff, and some stuff is failing and then just discarding it and then finding something else. But it's just not settling for the same things. You know what I mean? Not having a set plan for everybody, and then we're being scared to adapt. We've had a lot of success before as a gym, at every level of the sport, and then it's just trying to rest on your standards. Just constantly try and get better, try and push.
Does that become difficult to kind of manage on a camp where you've got four guys getting into potentially the biggest fights of their lives? You only have so many coaches and there's only one of you. How do you kind of divide your time? They make it individual enough so that the fighter is getting the most out of it, but you obviously can't have one-to-ones with them the whole time. They have to be mixed in with classes and stuff at times as well. How do you kind of find that balance, and is it difficult to do so?
Yeah, it's difficult, mate. So the individual stuff's always there, like a minimum of 3 times a week. And then what I normally do is I set them up into small groups. So they'll be in groups at kind of weight class, ability level. So like Mark and Lorenzo are always kind of in the same kind of group. Lorenzo's 4-0, Mark is 6-1. They're both lightweights. You've got Stevie in that group as well, a bit more experience and stuff like that. So you can put them into wee small groups where they all complement each other, and they'll give each other different problems and different looks and stuff like that. So we've kind of got that going on. Usually we split them in terms of experience and weight class. And then when they're in camp, some of the guys in that weight class group will take more of a training partner role. Do you know what I mean? So they're not getting ready to fight, but they're in all the time for rounds, for drilling and whatever else you need them for. And then the guys that fought the weekend will have to reciprocate that when they guys are fighting. So we're lucky that we've got a number of guys in here that the number's no small. Like there's I think there's like 25 fighters here, so it's not like a small group of fighters. Considering that we're in a town in Scotland, we're not in a city. We're not in like a Glasgow, or Edinburgh, or London, or Liverpool, or Manchester. We're in a town, but about 25 is manageable. And then I've got like a couple other guys that obviously help with the coaching. I just delegate stuff to them, or they all specialise in certain areas. So we've got guys that will be specialist jiu-jitsu coaches or specialist wrestling or Thai boxing coaches. So they kind of get involved. And then it's just making sure everybody's communicating with each other, like so that everybody's on the same page and working towards the same thing. So it's kind of like man management to a certain degree, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a massive part of it, and it seems like you've got it nailed down pretty well. Just as you're talking about jiu-jitsu specialists and one of your fighters, obviously Paul Craig is back in action, and 6 weeks out he is taking on Bo Nickel. I have a really good feeling about this one, because it's typical. It's just going to be typical Paul Craig causing the biggest upset possible. How is Paul 6 weeks out?
He's excited. So this was a fight I think he talked about before. I think he's excited because of the card. He's obviously on the John Jones card. He's third to last as far as I've seen on the main card. I think Poirier and Oliveira's one above or something, but it's a massive opportunity for him. It's probably going to be the biggest card of the year just because John Jones been on it. He's aware of the threat. He's aware that he's getting brought in for Bo Nickel to take Paul out like a more established name and whatever else. And he seems to thrive on these situations. He's been in that position a bunch of times where they bring in guys to make a name on him.
Ankalaev, Jamal Hill.
Yeah, and he's generally he's done pretty well in these situations. So in terms of the opportunity for him, he's mega excited and he's training hard. He's motivated, and I think he's keen to get out there and get in a fucking fight at Madison Square Garden, like 20,000. The big Madison Square Garden, 20,000 people in attendance to see John Jones, possibly his last ever fight, and he's excited, man. He's working hard. We're doing some certain stuff for that opponent wise and stuff like that as we should, but he's good, man. He's looking forward to the opportunity.
What is it about Paul? Let's hear something that's always interested me about Paul Craig is the fact that he never ever seems to get easy fights. It's like you look at his past defeats: Kyber Halio, Brendan Allen, Johnny Walker, I think Volkan Ozdemir. These are all top level guys, and especially at middleweight when you look at Allen and Berhalio. But what is it about these tough matchups that Paul Craig loves him? Why is it he does tend to thrive in these environments coming in as an underdog?
It's just the style he's got. Like he's obviously had that style well before I started working with him, but he's either going to win big or he's going to lose big.
Yeah. And
it's all whatever way it is. It's always going to be exciting. People are always going to talk about it. Do you know what I mean? He's just one of the fighters. He's got that level of jiu-jitsu off his back that you don't see in MMA. Never mind MMA at 185 or 205 pounds. It's like just no something you see much. Is still very much a specialist in a time when there's not really a lot of specialists about. Everybody else is well rounded and stuff like this, and aiming to be well rounded, and Paul's working on that as well. But I guess it's just that kill. I mean, he's either going to catch you and sub you and breaks on and put you to sleep, or he's going to get hurt himself trying it. Do you know what I mean? It's just that there's no middle ground with him. I think people are intrigued by that, and when it goes well, it's bonus material. Well, it's always some kind of submission, a bonus, and a highlight reel. That's the Jamal Hill stuff, and that's still getting replayed over and over to this day. And I think he's just got that level of jiu-jitsu where if you make a mistake against him or you're not smart, he's going to break your arm. He's going to put you to sleep.
As you mentioned that there, Jamal Hill one, it's a clip that I've watched time and time again because it is one of the nicest sort of transitions into an armbar I've seen in jiu-jitsu. And as you say, it's like something you'd see at IBJFF or these jiu-jitsu tournaments, not in the middle of a UFC cage where their arms are all greased and sweat it up. It's just not normal for you to see that. I want you to help settle the debate here. One that you always see online, which martial art is most effective for a normal person to protect themselves? We kind of touched on this why you started. You're a man with 4 black belts: karate, kickboxing, taekwondo, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So there's no better guy to ask.
Okay, I would MMA. Can I go MMA? I've got my kids doing jiu-jitsu, and then as they get older, I'll teach them how to strike and stuff. I think if it's for a self-defense perspective, I don't think I would go with jiu-jitsu. I think you can be in jiu-jitsu, and unless you're at the right school and stuff like that, you can still be a wee bit soft. And if things go bad outside, and it's more than one guy and stuff like that, then it's probably not going to help you. So I usually tend to lean towards maybe Muay Thai or even wrestling or judo, where you're just picking people up and launching them. In those systems, you don't get soft wrestlers. Do you know what I mean? They're all athletic and they're all mentally very tough. In the same way, good level Thai boxers and judo guys, they're all super athletic and mentally tough. Whereas sometimes, and it's the beautiful thing about jiu-jitsu, sometimes you'll get guys that are no athletic and they'll slip through the gap and they might not even be mentally tough, but they can still be effective. But I would probably go with a striking art, either boxing or Muay Thai, just for straight self-defence. Or even judo or wrestling before jiu-jitsu if I couldn't pick MMA. I'll probably get shit for that, but
I think that's actually a very interesting answer, and I thought you were the best man to answer it because of how sort of pedigreed you are in the different martial arts. You've got some unreal prospects coming through. The guys we've mentioned that won on Saturday night, obviously Sean Clancy Jr., who got a win at Cage Warriors just a few weeks ago. I want you to envision 5 years from now, how far can you see higher level MMA going? What kind of accolades could you see the gym having at that moment in time?
So what we're trying to do with the current group of guys is just better what the last groups have done. So our previous group, we've had Cage Warriors World Champions, and I think Sean's on track to do that again, hopefully pretty soon. We've had guys in the obviously going to the UFC. We've had Stevie co-main event the UFC twice, and Paul's main event at the UFC. So that's a goal for us to get guys co-main, like not just making the main card, but being co-main in main event positions, and eventually getting into title contention. And then eventually, we, the same as everyone else, we want a UFC champion. We want a PFL champion. Stevie obviously fought for the PFL title and came up short. So the next guy we want one of the guys maybe to win the PFL Europe thing, and then go into the global thing and win these belts. In the meantime, we're hoping that the crop of guys we've got generate enough interest for these promotions to keep coming back to Scotland to help kind of raise the standard of the sport and stuff like that. But the short answer to that is whatever our guys have done previously, which has been pretty big with world champions, Cage Warriors, challenging for the PFL world title, main event UFC, co-main event UFC. We want to better that. We want to one-up it with this current group. And then the group that we're already preparing to come after them, they'll one-up what they've done. And it's just constantly, again, pushing forward and getting standards higher and better and learning for the previous kind of groups.
I love that, and you can definitely see the trajectory that you are on, that is definitely going to be achievable. One last thing, there'll be coaches out there who'll be trying to replicate the success that higher level MMA has had. What key piece of advice would you offer when it comes to building a successful team environment?
Control the culture is the main thing. Like that saying, "Culture's king," is you need to control it without being a control freak. But there's nothing goes on in this gym without my influence on it. To the way the gym's shaped, to the structure of the timetable, to the people I let in here. There's some people come in here and just won't fit. They won't be able to keep up with the work ethic. They'll slow down the group. And then at the same time, you need to make sure your guys are accountable to themselves. But there's no time when I need to message guys and ask them where they are. The fighters will do that with each other. And it's just being honest with it. And again, if you're in it for, I think if I was trying to be famous or rich with this, we wouldn't be as successful. It's just try to keep everyone honest and be aware that it's a slog. The business side of it is not always great. The sports side of it and the training side is fascinating and it's fun. But I think for a coaching perspective, it's just do the work. Like, don't take any shortcuts. It's easy to do that, and just don't miss any steps. Like we started in a scout hall, and then moved into like a little gym that I think our first gym was at like 1,100 square feet, and now we're in this 5,000 square feet place. And it's just we've not missed a step. Do you know what I mean? We've gradually built up, and done it the right way. So when we go to compete with these other teams that are on a similar level to us, we don't look at our depth. We're competing against the best teams in Europe and the world, and we're hanging with them and bettering them.
That's a brilliant achievement, and I love that answer. Thank you very much for your time, James. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and congratulations again on a majorly successful night on Saturday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, mate.
Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping,
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
and you're watching Combat Sports UK.